Here is the voice of the working class, Rick Smith.
And welcome, brothers, sisters, working class heroes. This is the Rick Smith Show. Thanks so much for being here today on the big program. Lots to get to, lots to talk about. Some good news. Good news. CDC saying that fully vaccinated people, mostly, you can go maskless. And this will make the anti-mask people very happy because now they can lie to us and say, no, I'm fully vaccinated. See, I don't have a mask on. Yeah. See, this is where we're going to go now. And look, I don't care about them. The reality it is, this is smart. Get us away from the masking a little bit. Common sense, they're saying, though. And again, this is one of those struggles for we the people. When you're in large areas, combined, kind of packed in, wear the mask. Protect yourself. Common sense. Taking the kids to see Green Day over the summer. We've got tickets. We're going. We're going to wear a mask while we're there. Plan on going to see the Broncos in Pittsburgh and probably in Cleveland too. Going to wear a mask. Just a little bit of protection. And again, this goes back to something, I've been talking about through this entire process. Right when the pandemic began, before we knew anything about it, went to my family doctor, had a checkup. Family doctor says, don't know what it is, but here's what we know. Here's the playbook. Here's what you do during pandemic time. Here's what you do with virus. Stay away from each other, wash your hands, wear a mask. Simple. They should have made him in charge of all this because he was very, very honest about it. Simple. It's all we can do. That's all we can do. Until there's a vaccine, until there's a therapeutic to help you get through it. It's all you can do. There's nothing else. There's no magic cure. There's no shoving lights up your behind or drinking bleach. None of that. Common sense. And the other bit of advice he gave, he said, look, 6 months after they say it's okay, 6 months after they say it's okay to go maskless, he said there's going to be at least one guy who's going to be wearing his mask. And he said it's going to be me. And that makes sense to me. So now officially, my good doctor, this I believe is the day 6 months from today, wearing the mask. Because they're saying, hey, you don't have to. Still going to do it for the next 6 months. Because, one, I trust my doctor. I trust him full-heartedly. But two, just common sense. We're going to go into large crowds. We're going to get back into that. We're going to protect ourselves. Sane, rational, lucid, all of that. Also, some other good news. The vaccinations will begin for children 12 to 15. The CDC did give the green light for that. And we'll see where it goes. There's the Pfizer 2-dose vaccine that's already been approved for 16 and older. We're now looking for the 12 to 15 group where both of my kids fit. My two youngest kids, that's where they fit. And look, I'm looking forward to them getting that so we can go to the concerts and we can go to football games in the fall. Looking forward to getting back to the kind of things that we did as a family, the kind of things that we did, just me and the kids. So looking forward to that. Also, some other good news. Both presidents of each of the two teachers unions, the NEA, National Education Association, Becky Pringle over there, and AFT, the American Federation of Teachers, Randy Weingarten over there, have both said, come fall time, swing the doors open. We're going to embrace bringing kids back to school full time and get back on track in the fall, as I've been saying for the longest time. Stop with this nonsensical fighting right now. Now, not the time. In the fall, we're gonna be all right. You get the kids vaccinated, smart, sane, rational, thoughtful. I'm all in favor of it because, to be honest, it was my idea to begin with. So there is that. And here's the thing. I mean, it doesn't take a rocket scientist to figure this stuff out. Again, you go back and you talk to people you trust, like I did with my family doctor, and if they're smart, they're going to lay it out in very stark terms. And my guy did. He said, look, this is all we can do. There's no magic pill to this stuff. This is the playbook. And the fact that the Trump administration didn't do it right from the start, knowing what it is, because look, they knew. There's nothing going to convince me that they didn't know that this was the playbook. This was it. This is all there is. It's all there's ever been. And to say that, well, it'll be gone, a couple days. We're closing in on, 600,000 people dying from this? All because we couldn't do common sense, simple things. And we had an administration who kept denying that it was real and doing, at the very beginning, doing actual harm instead of good. And look, a CDC that was, dropped the ball right from the start. There were a lot of failures here. And a lot of it had to do with going back to the former guy. Nobody wanted to step on the former guy's toes. Nobody wanted to feel the wrath of the former guy. And this is where we are. Now, good news. The Biden administration has done very well. In fact, his approval rating in handling the virus, last time I saw it was pushing 80%, which is wow. That means that some Trump supporters had to go, hey, he's doing an okay job. There had to be a few. So there is that. So I'm happy to hear that. Good news. So we're going to start the day off with a little bit of good news. Now let's get into the crazy, because there is plenty of crazy. But we're going to start with Georgia Republican Representative Andrew Clyde, who has been all over the news today. And look, this isn't, for listeners of this program, none of this is new. I know a lot of the news media is now, oh my goodness, they're trying to normalize what happened on January 6th. I've been talking about this for a while. But Representative Clyde had this to say: there was no insurrection. To call it an insurrection is a bold-faced lie. Watching the TV footage of those who entered the Capitol and walked through Statuary Hall showed people in an orderly fashion staying between the stanchions and ropes, taking videos and pictures. If you didn't know the TV footage was a video from January 6th, you'd think it was a normal tourist visit. And I saw that little extra at the end. Because look, they've been all saying, January 6th wasn't what you saw it was. It wasn't as bad as it looked. These were good people on both sides. Even the ones who were smashing the windows and all that. And my mind went, when I saw this, it looked like any normal tourist visit day. And I'm going, you know what? I've been on some of these tourist visits. I've done some of this stuff. I've lobbied in the halls of the Capitol. I don't remember ever seeing anyone drop trow and take a dump in the middle of the hall. And then I don't remember people taking it and wiping it on the walls. I don't remember that in a normal visit. But this time someone decided it was important to defecate on the floor. And someone, I guess, came along and wiped it all over the place. Good for them. I know the excitement. They couldn't hold it in. They just had to let it out. And every day, legislators are being rushed off to some corner bathroom somewhere where they're cowering in fear because there are people outside that want to kill them. Yeah, that happens every day during tourist days. Absolutely. And every day there's someone out there building a gallows to hang the vice president. That happens, 4 or 5 times a week at least. This is what they want us to believe. Hey kids, we're going to take the kids on down to see the Washington Monument. We'll go over to the Jefferson, and maybe we'll kill a policeman or two. It happens all the time. It's on the agenda. That's what they want us to believe. And what it is, really, honestly and truthfully, is classic abuser talk. This is the classic wife beater talk. I would not be surprised if this guy's a wife beater. Wouldn't be surprised at all. Because this is what they do. Oh, well, it wasn't that bad. Oh, well, they deserved it, those Democrats. They vacillate between it wasn't as bad. It wasn't so bad. Well, you were asking for it. The Dems made us do it. Promise not to do it again until, of course, next time. And this is where this weird kind of world that we're in right now, because you've got a major media machine out there parroting this stuff. It wasn't so bad. These were good, God-fearing Americans just lobbying their representatives. Yeah, they were stabbing the cops with the flagpole, and they were smashing windows, and they were, again, defecating on the floor, urinating on desks, stealing computers, tearing up papers, emptying cabinets. It happens every day. All the time. It happens all the time. And they want you to believe that this is normal. And in their world, this is okay. This is normal. This is what they want to be normal. If something that if they don't like it, they're going to smash it. They're going to come for you. And they want you to be in fear. What's interesting to me is, I wonder, and this is where if I were a Democratic representative, there's part of me where if I'm in those halls and my Republican colleagues are there, the ones who refuse to wear a mask while they're confined in an area, cowering from the mob, there's part of me that goes, no, we vote these people out of the safety, and we push them out into the crowd. I got to tell you, I wish one of them would have had the courage to step out there and go, hey, stop it. I wish one of them. I would have loved to have seen what would have happened to them. Because they stoked this fire. They built this monster. They pushed these people into this. Them and Dear Leader. And now one of the only people who's talking out against Dear Leader, they threw her out of leadership. And again, I don't care about Liz Cheney at all. She, in my view, is a horrible, horrible legislator with terrible, terrible ideas. Her policy ideas are horrible just because she won't out and out lie and buy into the fantasy that somehow Dear Leader won. Doesn't make me jump on her side. I say, good, at least you're honest. I still think you're a horrible legislator. And speaking of horrible legislator, because look, they've canceled Liz Cheney, but Marjorie Taylor Greene, she's aces. They love her. In fact, the story, again, another one of those stories getting attention from yesterday, evidently MTG, Marjorie Taylor Greene, actually stalked down and attempted to accost AOC Alexandria Ocasio-Cortez. Again, the kind of things that she did to that kid, that David Hogg kid. Why don't you care about America? What's wrong with you? Why do you support terrorists? Why do you breathe air? Crazy stuff. Because she needs the feedback. Because again, this is the abuser stuff. The only way she gets attention and the love that she needs from the crazy side is to get worse and worse and worse. And good on AOC for ignoring her. Just going, you know what? Not getting into this with you. You are so nuts, just not going to do it. Now, I'll tell you, my first reaction, and when I saw this story is, I had wished that AOC would have just turned around and popped her right between the eyes. But that's what they want, because that's what they understand. And then that gives them the ability to say, see? Bad people on both sides. When the reality is that this is who they are. This kind of craziness, this kind of insanity. And what we're witnessing is the normalization of the worst behavior and the worst abuses under the guise of some kind of bizarre patriotism. That somehow this is the new American way to stand up for yourself. Threats and intimidation and insurrection. There was a letter the other day that went out by the 1-6ers, proud, patriotic Americans who aren't going to back down because we're calling them what they are, insurrectionists and terrorists. They, while in prison, singing happy, organizing, evidently are 1-6ers, and there's a bunch of them that are being held in detention for trial. Evidently, every day they say the national anthem. They recite the Pledge of Allegiance. They're singing loud and proud the anthem there. It's a cult, really, because they've got their ritual. They've got their symbols. They've got their icons. And they got their cult-like leaders like Marjorie Taylor Greene, who, to be honest, I think you could find someone smarter, someone better, someone more interesting, other than someone who's going to run down the hall screaming, "Yeah, why do you hate America?" I have a better argument, maybe, but that's all they've got. And this is the weird thing to me, because I keep coming back to this moment of, we've got real problems in this country. We've got real issues that need to be addressed. There's nothing coming from the Republican Party, and they're not going to help. There are no votes coming from them. There's no help. There's no policy. There's nothing. You hear people say, well, we want to work bipartisan. How can you have a bipartisan solution to something when one of the political parties is Fruit Loops? How can you have a real solution when you've got a Marjorie Taylor Greene or a Matt Gaetz or a Lauren Boebert? How can you possibly get things done? And that's always been my mantra. I got to get things done. We've got real problems. We've got families who are suffering. We've got kids who are going to bed hungry. We've got veterans who are homeless. We've got bridges that got massive cracks in them. And who knows what kind of danger that could have been. We've got real problems. And yet what we get is a circus. We get a freak show. We get Marjorie Taylor Greene and the cabal. So I go back to Republicans. If there are any of you who are sane and lucid and rational, take what's left of your flaming party. Take what's left of the spiraling into insanity party and move it somewhere back. I'm not even asking anywhere near the sane line, just going in that direction at this point. Something. Love to hear your thoughts. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. I'm really, there are days where you go, really? And this is one of them. Quick break, right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
There's nothing more American than workers standing up, and the union gives a voice to win. On The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1975. That was the day workers at Tolteca Foods in Richmond, California, went out on strike. Many were undocumented Mexican women who helped organize the plant in 1969. In his book, The Revolutionary Imaginations of Greater Mexico, historian Alan Aledo Gomez states that the women had grown increasingly frustrated with the lack of union response regarding speed-ups, immigration raids, discretionary firings, substandard wages and unsafe working conditions, and began to look elsewhere for support. They reached out to the organization CASA, which provided legal and social services for undocumented immigrants. The women decided to strike without authorization from the Contra Costa Labor Council. They packed the council's emergency meeting, where they put their scarred bodies on display to attest to the dangerous and abusive working conditions and poor wages. Just as the council sanctioned the strike, workers learned the company started removing machinery from the factory. They packed the picket lines to stop the trucks from taking out the equipment. The first driver stopped. The second plowed through several women. The strike committee won an injunction to prevent the removal of equipment, and after 3 weeks, workers won their demands. Gomez argues the strike was important for several reasons. It demonstrated that a large female and undocumented workforce could organize and win a strike against a transnational company at a moment when unions were increasingly under attack. they built a rank-and-file independence that built support for their demands from their union leaders and the broader community. The women workers at Tolteca fought for bread and butter issues. They also worked to reshape their union to take on broader issues of social justice that included immigration rights and women's rights.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So as I've been saying, this administration, the most pro-worker administration, at least of my lifetime. And I would feel safe to say the most pro-worker administration since FDR. Just throwing that out there. This has been an administration clearly on the side of working people, and I'm not surprised to see the U.S. Trade Representative Kathleen Tai and her office coming out and being very proactive and pushing this section of the USMCA, the formerly Nafta, the new Nafta, that was going to help Mexican workers organize and ensure that they get independent unions and have the right to collective bargaining and doing some of the things that I think we would like to have here too, but at least in a way ensuring that it happens in Mexico. And Mexico has a leader who's saying that they want that too. So this can be an interesting time. And here to share some thoughts on what exactly it is that the USMCA has done, what part of it we're talking about, and what these workers in Mexico endured, and maybe what the solution is going to be. I've asked Arthur Stamoulis to come talk with us. He's the executive director of the Citizens Trade Campaign. Citizenstrade.org is their website. Arthur, thanks for taking time for us.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rick.
So let's walk through this from the beginning. You had the old NAFTA, which, the only labor standards in it were very toothless and easy to get around. Trump renegotiated NAFTA, and there was some good stuff on the labor front, right?
Yeah, no, that's true. The Trump administration did renegotiate NAFTA. The deal that Trump initially signed off on had a couple of good things in it, but also a ton of junk, like, new monopoly rights for pharmaceutical companies that would have jacked up medicine prices, language locking in deregulation for big tech. And so at that time, labor unions, consumer groups, Democrats in Congress, others, looked at that initial deal and said, no way, like this is not going to pass through Congress as written. And together we were able to force the removal of a lot of the bad language, particularly on medicines, but also we're able to add new enforcement provisions that at least give us a shot at trying to enforce NAFTA's labor standards. And so, that deal eventually passed. The Trump administration had the power to enforce labor standards within that revised NAFTA deal. They for whatever reason, never used those powers.
Right.
But now, less than 2 months after Joe Biden's new U.S. Trade Representative was confirmed, she already has a labor rights enforcement case going. It's one that labor unions didn't even ask her to do. She's done this on her own initiative. And so that alone is a sea change in attitude, right? Do you use trade agreements to try to help corporations get even richer, or do you use them to try to enforce labor rights? And so, this new case and other cases are going to be a good test as to how well that NAFTA revision will or will not work moving forward. This is, again, when Trump was in office, he didn't even try to make it work. But now we have people in power who are interested in seeing labor rights enforced. We're just going to have to see how far they can get with the tools in place.
Now, obviously, this story is about the 6,000 workers at the GM plant in Silo. Is that how it's pronounced? Silo?
Silao. Yeah, Silao.
And evidently there was an election that went on, and there's a ton of the way it was explained to me. If I thought Amazon was bad, this was 10 times worse, and Amazon was really bad. That these workers, clearly lost the election because of all of the things that went on, and now they're talking about a new election, right?
Yeah. So an issue in this case, and in a lot of labor rights abuses cases across Mexico, is this issue of what are called protection unions, where the company will work with a corrupt union. They'll sign a contract that the workers had no say in negotiating, no say in approving whatsoever. And this has been the case in Mexico for decade after decade after decade. And under Mexican labor law now, just in the past few years, that practice is supposed to be illegal, but it's still extremely widespread. And so this particular case involves a GM plant in central Mexico that produces hundreds of thousands of the Chevy Silverado and GMC Sierra pickup trucks, a huge proportion of which are shipped back to the U.S. And this plant has a protection union. Under the new law, the workers there are supposed to get to vote on their contracts. And so the company, essentially tried to orchestrate a rubber stamp type election, to approve that contract, but they got caught. First off, the more than 6,000 workers at the plant had a 15-hour window to vote. They didn't even get to read the contract. It wasn't even posted online. It's like, oh, we've got a contract, vote on it. You don't get to see it. Then a bunch of the ballots that the workers, put in opposing the contract got destroyed, and the protection union has refused to turn in the ballots that were counted over to authorities for account verification. And stuff like this is why, Mexico has wages that are actually far lower than those in China, right? I mean, it's exactly why companies like GM like to set up shop there. Worker rights are not respected. And as a result, workers are paid far, far less for the same exact work that workers in the U.S., and other countries are paid for. And so the Biden administration has officially filed this complaint with the Mexican government. The Mexican government has 10 days to respond. And if some agreement isn't reached to rectify the issue, the U.S. can eventually impose really heavy tariffs on the trucks coming to the U.S. from that plant. It's about a 25% tariff. So when you look at the price of a truck, that's a lot of money. Yeah. And hopefully that's enough to get some justice for the workers at this plant.
Now, if I remember right, there was something talking about all of the auto, especially in autos, that there was like a minimum wage that had to be paid of a certain $16 pops into my head, but that seems really high for Mexican wages. Do you remember anything about that?
Yeah, so in the new Nafta deal, there what's called rules of origin, which mean that the parts that go into a big product, like a truck, like a car, that those parts have to be made by workers earning a certain wage. And so when it comes to a car under the new Nafta deal, in total, all the parts have to be made by workers averaging $16 an hour, which, it's a good precedent to set that there should be a wage standard in there. The problem is that, it's probably a pretty easy standard to meet, because they throw in stuff like the design of the product, like the white collar folks wages who are getting, 6-figure incomes averaging out with these workers in Mexico who are making far, 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 far less. So I'm skeptical that that's actually going to benefit any worker in Mexico, let alone in the United States. But it is an interesting precedent that we should be building off of moving forward.
I mean, it's something. I mean, at the end of the day, and this is where, even when the former guy was in the White House, I said, look, the fact that he got some things into the USMCA that I don't think anyone else could have gotten, because I don't think Republicans would have ever gone along with getting rid of the tribunals and actual some bit of labor law reform. I think, I don't know that it's enough, but at least it was something.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's important for listeners to know that the Trump administration never proposed those labor reforms. Like labor and Democrats in Congress are the ones who fought for it. But, it certainly is true. Some Republicans went along with it who probably would not have were it not for a Republican in the White House. That's absolutely the case.
Yeah. So where do you see this going? Because there is some coordination going on, as I understand, from our U.S. trade rep and the person in Mexico that she deals with. What are we looking for? What do you think? What do you think this is gonna bear out?
Yeah, no, it's an interesting question because there is an administration in Mexico as well that is much more labor friendly than any previous Mexican administration for many decades. And one of the big problems they face is that the state governments in Mexico are often extremely hostile to labor. That they're part and parcel of this corrupt union protection union racket, and they don't want workers to have more power. And so the hope is that these NAFTA cases will empower those elements in Mexico that are serious about independent unions and are serious about union rights, and also will be a way to pressure the corporations like GM that have always, if not worked hand in hand with these corrupt protection unions, at least look the other way to make them understand, hey, if you continue this, your products are going to face tariffs, and the benefit of moving to a low wage nation like Mexico are going to be taken away from you. So there's a lot of hope right now. The labor unions in the U.S. and Mexico have filed another case under NAFTA for auto parts workers at a Trinex plant across the border, where workers who tried to form an independent union were illegally dismissed. Their attorney was arrested on trumped up charges. Another good example of how worker rights abuses in other countries, in Mexico, not only hurt workers there, and certainly they hurt the workers there first and foremost, but also hurt workers in the U.S. because, at that company, just a few years ago, 1,600 unionized workers in an auto parts plant owned by the same company here in Pennsylvania were laid off when the company decided to move production to Mexico. And so, it just shows, if we want to see good jobs, better wages anywhere, we can't allow this race to the bottom in worker rights to occur. And so again, for the first time ever, we have a good U.S. trade representative willing to try to address these issues. Hopefully the tools that she currently has under the current NAFTA pact are going to be strong enough to allow for some of that change to happen. My guess is we're going to have to fight for even better deals and better laws moving forward.
And obviously our trade deals need to be updated with labor law reform happening. And look, this is a step in the right direction. Needs to be much stronger. We need to do much more. But the fact that we're talking about giving workers in Mexico the opportunity to raise their wages, I think is a good thing, because I think it will stem some of the flight out of the country. But there's still the behemoth in the room, and that's China, and it's still a lot of other places that we've got bad trade deals with. So it's my view that this is great. It's a step, but we got a lot more to go.
Yeah, no, that's absolutely right. I mean, this is a trade deal, with Mexico and Canada. That's it. We're offshoring jobs all around the world, in particular to China. And so, if our new trade ambassador, Catherine Tai, can show, number one, where these existing labor standards can be used and how they can be used. And maybe number two, where they fall short, hopefully we can get policymakers to push for even bigger changes, on a bilateral basis and then eventually globally. Obviously we know that there's some policymakers who are with us on this, but it's going to be, it's going to be a fight. It's going to be a fight to get workers' power. It always has been. It always will be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Now, I'm looking at this and, you go really quick. We've got two cases. I can't imagine that it's going to end here. And there potentially could be a flood of these to the point to where I think the system could completely bog down. And then we end up, in the same kind of mess. No?
Well, I mean, hope, it does take quite a bit of resources to file one of these cases. I mean, it's I know that the unions who are involved in the filing that happened just this Monday, spent many, many months, sort of getting worker testimonials, preparing legal documents, et cetera, to make sure that they had a solid case that could be won, and that was the complaint that was filed. You're absolutely right that if these first initial initial tests of the system are successful, I mean, my hope is it will lead to a flood of additional cases, and some actual change in the system for working people. But, you're right. I mean, the situation in Mexico, is not unique. This GM plant is not unique. The Trinex plant is not unique. This is what workers across the entire economy are facing. And the hope is that these initial cases will start to make some change.
Right. So who hears this case? I mean, you said they built these cases. Who hears the cases?
Yeah. So the Office of the U.S. Trade Representative in the White House is the first to sort of review the cases, and then if they decide there's enough here, they initiate the complaint with Mexico. Then Mexico has 10 days to respond, 45 days to sort of come to some sort of plan. And if the two countries can't agree on an action plan to fix the situation, then it's heard by a panel of labor rights experts from both countries. One country picks some of them, the other country picks some of the others, and they make a decision on the case ultimately. So that's the point where if there's no agreement, you start imposing tariffs.
Okay, because I'm looking at that, I'm going, again, this is one of those scenarios where it really depends on who's in the White House and who's choosing those people on that panel, then, right?
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, this is why, the Trump administration signed off on it, but they never used the power. It's interesting because Joe Biden's U.S. Trade Representative is actually someone who was working for Democrats in Congress at the time and helped write many of these mechanisms. And so she knows them inside and out, and hopefully we'll be able to see them through to make actual change and get some workers some justice.
So since, this is your focus, how long is it going to be before we see the outcome in this? Because as you said, there's some pretty interesting deadlines going on. How soon before we see what the outcome of this is?
Yeah, so they call this a rapid response mechanism. I mean, it's going to take months before there's a final adjudication and final, agreement or imposition of tariffs. But if you look at some of our past trade agreements, the process actually took a decade.
Right.
So this is quite a bit faster. And the fact that, USTR has to respond to petitions within 30 days, and then if they move forward with them, Mexico has to respond within 10 days. That's quite a bit faster than what we've ever had in the past.
Yeah, I'm looking forward to see how this plays out, because this could be a great tool in helping to at least attempt to level the playing field. So I'm looking forward to it. But Arthur, I appreciate the time. It's always good talking with you.
Yeah, thanks for having me, Rick.
Good stuff. Arthur Stamoulis, Executive Director of Citizens Trade Campaign, citizenstrade.org, a website. We'll get links out on social media. You can take a look at that. Quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1968. That was the day that workers across Paris joined students in a citywide general strike. College students had begun an occupation at the famed Sorbonne University earlier that May. These students were protesting what they saw as governmental repression in post-war France. A story by NPR marking the 40th anniversary of the protests described the situation in France, where women could not wear pants to work and married ones needed a husband's permission to open a bank account. Homosexuality was a crime. Factory workers could be fired at will. The news on the single TV channel required governmental approval, and the overcrowded education system was authoritarian. The students protested French leader Charles de Gaulle and the police. The addition of workers to the protest greatly increased its scope and impact. Paris and much of the country ground to a halt. President de Gaulle was able to weather the protests and keep his political power. By the end of June, most workers had returned to their jobs, but the country would never be the same. The protests of that spring became known as the Social Revolution. It was a turning point in the nation's history, and institutions from workplaces to universities would undergo a liberalization due to the protests. One of the most lasting images from the strike was a series of posters, simple designs emblazoned with the slogans and demands of those involved. One such poster called people to strike, declaring, "Working now is working with a gun to your head." Another read simply, "Factories, Universities, Union."
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So you know how all we've been hearing the last week, at least the last week, is that employers can't find employees because they're lazy, and because Joe Biden has given them money and they're greedy. So lazy, greedy people don't want to go back to work for crummy wages. And understand, the places that are screaming the most are the ones who are in the fast food industry, in the hospitality industry, bars and restaurants. You know, the people who were paying crummy wages before the pandemic, you know, the ones who were paying poverty wages then. Well, the story now, headline blaring across over at Reuters, "Desperate for workers, U.S. restaurants and stores raise pay." And you go, about damn time. Good. It needed to happen. So the pandemic did anything? Maybe it boosted wages a little bit, and that's a good thing. Now, some other things I think the employers can be doing, helping us make sure that all of us get vaccinated. And here, share some thoughts on how employers can help do that. I've asked Emily G. to come talk with us. She is a senior economist for health policy there at the Center for American Progress. AmericanProgress.org is their website. Emily, thanks for taking time for us.
Thanks for having me on, Rick.
So as a senior economist, you got to be looking at the pay raises going, yeah, this is how this works. You need workers. There's a shortage of workers. You sweeten the pot a little bit so that they come. It seems like common sense.
Exactly. That's how the market's supposed to work. One other thing that employers need to think about, too, is making sure that workers feel safe at work. We're only about a third vaccinated nationwide. And so employers can do a lot more to make sure that, that their communities get vaccinated, but their workers are safe too, especially when with today's news that vaccinated people no longer need to wear masks indoors.
Yep. No, and yesterday I talked a little bit about this story in Arizona, where this golf cart company offered the employees who got vaccinated an extra $1 an hour in their paycheck, and the people who didn't get vaccinated, they were losing their minds because they felt like they were, well, we don't get it. Of course you don't get it, because you're not protecting yourself. And then the question came up of, well, why would employers want their workers vaccinated outside of just the common sense of lower healthcare costs? Hey, we want our customers safe too. I'm curious your thoughts.
Sure. So protecting yourself is certainly part of it, right? We know that people who are vaccinated have a far lower rate of getting sick at all, a very small chance, compared to people who are unvaccinated of getting very sick. And the vaccine also prevents people from dying of COVID. But it's not just about ourselves. It's also about protecting our communities and protecting our coworkers at work, protecting our clients or customers if we're in the workplace where we're face to face with other people, including people who might not be able to be vaccinated because they're kids or because they have religious or health reasons to not get vaccinated. So it's important for health, and it's also important for business. People will feel safer at work when the community is protected, and people will feel better about going out and being consumers too if they know that their chance of catching the coronavirus from the community is much lower.
Now, the thing that gets me is, I've had these conversations with, as someone who's, a member of a labor union and actually, does some work with labor unions, this question comes up of what if you have members who don't want to get vaccinated? How do you deal with that? What should the company, what responsibility does the company have? Can the company force them to do it? How do you see going forward this question playing out? Because look, we know there's going to be at least 25% of us who are stupid enough to go, no, we're never going to do it because, there could be Bill Gates, putting chips in our arms or aliens or whatever theory they come up with. You're going to get those recalcitrant people who are going to say this anyway. So you got to deal with them. How do employers deal with them, do you think?
So there are a variety of reasons why people don't get vaccinated or don't want to get vaccinated. And I think it's important for employers to consider why that is. So there are some people who respond to surveys saying that, they want to get it right away. I think that's, there are increasingly resources out there to get the vaccine at retail pharmacies, in community health centers. There are also, people who want to wait and see because they're concerned about the side effects. They're concerned about needing to miss work in order to just get the vaccine, or because they might need to take time off to recover. And there are some people who don't want to get it at all. And maybe they just need to know more information about the risks of COVID or the benefits of the vaccine.
Come on, Emily. Come on. Hold on, stop.
Sure,
Come on. I think you're giving them way too much credit. There are people who, no matter what fact you lay in front of them, no matter how much common sense you make, no matter what you say, never going to do it. Never.
Sure. So I will get there. But I think, before we deal with those types of folks, I think we still have a ways to go, and employers need to step it up to make sure that people who are hesitant, are truly hesitant and whose minds can be changed, have better access, including things like paid leave for both the vaccination and recovery, and know where to get the vaccine. If you're someone who speaks Spanish or, doesn't have internet access at home, or works hours that, that mean that you aren't, able to go get the vaccine during business hours, it can be hard to get the vaccine. And so there's a lot that employers can do to increase access.
Right.
That said, I think there are some categories of employers that need to seriously consider mandating the vaccine for both worker safety and public safety. So, for example, I think healthcare facilities is an obvious one. We have had, hundreds of thousands of people die in nursing homes during the pandemic. But maybe also, high density workplaces like meatpacking plants where people are literally working elbow to elbow and can't safely social distance.
Yeah. So, one of the things that kept coming up is, because, what do you do with them then if they just absolutely refuse? Do you fire them? And as a union guy, I'm like, no, I don't think you should be able to fire them. But do you make them wear masks and all of that stuff? I'm curious, you as the health policy expert, what do you do with those folks who, no matter what you're going to say or do, what's the path?
So I think vaccine requirements are something that firms will need to seriously consider. That said, I think we shouldn't just assume that these people are never going to get vaccinated. Both unions and employers and local and state government need to be working very hard to make sure that people have good information. Because when people don't understand, there's a lot of disinformation out there, right? So we need to make sure that people have good resources, can get their questions answered by people they trust, which includes, peers in their community. It could be religious leaders. It could be physicians and nurses and other healthcare professionals. We need to make sure that people have all the information and access that they need.
I look at a state like Ohio, who they're having a lottery. There are going to be 5 people over the next several weeks who are going to be lucky millionaires for simply going and doing what, for I think most people, is just common sense. I look at West Virginia; they're handing out, I guess, what is it, $100 savings bonds. I've heard of places, giving out whiskey and all kinds of incentives. Are you in favor of the incentives?
I love the creativity. I think it's fantastic. I think New Orleans is giving away a pound of crawdads. Maine's giving away hunting and fishing licenses. If that's what it takes, so be it. I think any way we can get people to get vaccinated is great.
Now, obviously, you're the health policy expert here, and to talk about the facts. The vaccine is very safe. I mean, in fact, they stopped using the J&J shot because what was it at the time? 20 women developed some kind of blood clot that they had to figure out, so they stopped it for everybody. So it was so safe that you couldn't even get it because out of, what was it, 7-8 million, 20 people had this reaction.
That's right. The vaccines have, been through rigorous trials in order to even get the authorization from the FDA. These are placebo-controlled trials where half the people are given the vaccine and half aren't. Not only are the vaccines extremely safe, but they also dramatically lower the risk of getting COVID-19, far above the minimum threshold that the FDA set out at the beginning of the pandemic.
Now, you have the folks over there on Fox News, a couple of them anyway, saying, well, we don't know, Emily, we don't know what the long-term side effects are. and we don't know, but as of this moment, we've had a year of people getting this vaccine almost. Anything?
Yeah, we still know they're safe. So you got to remember that even though the vaccines were approved or they're authorized for the general population only late in 2020, the trials for the vaccine began over a year ago, which means that there are some people out there who've had the Moderna or J&J or Pfizer shot for a year or more, and we still we know that they're very safe and they're very effective. We also know that there are long-term side effects of having COVID-19, aside from the acute respiratory distress that a lot of people were in with, being in the hospital on a ventilator. We also are seeing people who months or a year later are still suffering from fatigue or circulatory problems or other types of health issues because they had COVID.
So in your article, and I hope folks will take a look at it, employers can accelerate COVID-19 vaccination efforts over at the AmericanProgress.org website, and we'll get links out on how folks can take a look at that. You go through 10 ways that employers can support COVID-19 vaccination. You say improving access. Obviously, we want, I was saying, look, we've got bloodmobiles that'll come to your workplace and siphon blood out of you. While they can now do the other thing. I think we can send ice cream trucks around and do it if we had to.
Right, and I think these are things that we framed the paper around what employers could do, but it could be any private sector organization or public institution or even unions. Right, I think. I talked to some union leaders who said that they were helping arrange for clinics because employees tend to trust the union. Unions could help make sure that information is available in break rooms. They could arrange for Q&A sessions with members. And so I think there are things that all of us can do to step up and ensure that everybody has access to the vaccine.
Yeah, I mean, it comes down to easy access, as you guys talk about, information, obviously. Mm-hmm. And again, in your article, you talk about incentives, the discounts, the lottery winnings. And of course, then you're saying you got to require and you got to verify it. So are you talking about, everyone's going to have their passports or their cards or their tattoos across the forehead or whatever?
So I think increasingly, as we see people offering, organizations offering incentives, and businesses requiring vaccination, maybe perhaps in lieu of masking and other measures, or just to show up at work, there will be popping up some credentialing systems. We're seeing private sector companies fill the gap. I think notably New York has created its a state phone app that you can use to show you're vaccinated. I think these are all sort of organically happening and necessary given the sort of incentives and requirements that we have right now. That said, I hope that employers and firms that are creating these apps ensure that people who don't have digital access are able to access apps, that they're accessible for people with disabilities, and also that they safeguard consumer privacy.
Right. Now, as a health expert, what place do we have to get to before this is in the rearview mirror? I know there's talk of 75% before we hit herd immunity. Not too long ago, you had the CDC and some other folks saying, we're just not going to get there. They don't believe that's going to happen. That COVID is going to be with us for a very long time. I'm curious your thoughts and opinions.
So there are numbers out there for so-called herd immunity, but I think the real message is that the more, the better. So if we could get to 70 or 80%, that'd be fantastic. That said, there's no reason to give up just because we're still only at 35% vaccinated. If we could get to say 50 or 60%, which is where Israel and the UK are, we would probably see a similar trend in cases and deaths that they have, which is that, deaths are down to near zero and cases drop dramatically as more of the population got vaccinated.
Now, we don't see the stories every day on the news anymore, but we still have like 700 people who die every day and thousands of people are being infected every day, right?
This is not over yet. That's absolutely right. In fact, most of the counties in the United States are still at a high or substantial level of community transmission, according to the CDC definition. So, it's important that we keep, even though some people are vaccinated, we keep doing things like wearing masks indoors where the transmission is high. I think that's important for protecting workers.
Yeah.
Who will be going to work and might not have a way of verifying whether people in the store or the restaurant are actually vaccinated or not.
Yeah, my plan is, and I'm curious your thought as an expert. This summer, I'm taking my kids. We're going to go to a couple of concerts. In the fall, I plan on, attending a football game or two. We plan on kind of trying to go back to what life was normally like. But we're still when we go to these places, gonna wear the mask, because it seems like common sense to me. Do you think it's safe to go into those environments?
So, a lot of this is going to be going forward is going to be individual decisions about tolerance for risk. I think a lot of it's going to depend on what your local area looks like. Are there a lot of cases? Are people vaccinated? I think folks should weigh that in their decisions. And then it's also, a personal preference. So for myself, I've got 2 young kids for whom the vaccine is not available yet. So, I'm looking forward to going to, say, outdoor baseball games this summer, but won't be taking them indoors to restaurants or museums until the community transmission is much, much lower. Would want them to wear masks on the instances where we do go indoors.
So let me ask you this, as the mother of small children, if, because Tucker Carlson said that's child abuse and someone should come in and put you in your place and call Child Protective Services on you for having the audacity to put a mask on a child. Any thoughts?
I think that not having kids wear masks when the level of community transmission is high is irresponsible. I love my kids and I want them to be safe and healthy. I think one thing I've learned through the pandemic is kids are just amazingly resilient and adaptable, and they, go grab their masks every time we go out. And, I think it's peace of mind for all of us to know that they can play around close to other kids and go to school, but also be safe.
It's so nice of you. I mean, my first thought was F Tucker Carlson, and if I find him, if he came up and gave me a hard time, I'd smack him. But that's just me. There's just me and my kids. Very, very different way of handling it. But Emily, I appreciate you taking some time for us, sharing some of your expertise and some of your thoughts. Hope folks will take a look at the article, Employers Can Accelerate COVID-19 Vaccination Efforts, over at AmericanProgress.org. We'll get links out on social media on how you can take a look at that. Emily, it was great talking with you. I appreciate you taking some time for us.
Same. Thank you, Rick.
Good stuff. Good stuff. No, and look, for me, this is simple. We're almost through it. Little common sense, little sanity. Don't rush into things. But if you're in a crowd, wear the mask. I think the information by the CDC said today, if you're vaccinated, it's okay. It's okay. Just a little bit of common sense and a little courtesy of others. Just my thoughts. I'd love to hear yours. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Quick break. Right back after this. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show.
Remembering that united we bargain, divided we beg. Rick Smith.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1998. And if you tried to catch a cab in New York City on that particular day, you probably did not have much luck. The city's yellow cab drivers held a one-day strike to protest Mayor Rudolph Giuliani's new taxi cab regulations. 90% of the city's more than 12,000 taxi cabs stayed parked on that day. 2,000 cabs lined up along 14th Street and Avenue D in a demonstration of strength and a sign of solidarity. It was the first taxi driver strike in New York City in 30 years. The strike was led by the National Taxi Workers Alliance and their founder, Haravi Desai. After 15 years of trying to organize, the taxi drivers had just founded their union that February. The union represented workers from 85 countries, as many of the cab drivers were immigrants. The New York Times reported that city officials were stunned by the success of the strike. The one-day action showed the solidarity of the taxi drivers union. Today, the Taxi Workers Alliance represents 200,000 taxi drivers
drivers who provide an estimated 1 billion rides each year to New Yorkers and tourists. One New York taxi driver expressed the union's importance, saying, "With my union, I get the spiritual boost and the inspiration to overcome the obstacles in my track. I am a member of the AFL-CIO. It's a great feeling." Unionization is important for taxi drivers. They often have to pay steep fees for their medallion to operate their cabs, and fluctuating fuel costs can eat into their profits. Rideshare programs such as Uber are further eroding cab drivers' livelihoods. Organizing workers like cab drivers, car wash workers, and service employees is an important front for today's labor movement.
Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us at Labor History in 2.
Is corporate ethics an oxymoron? Do you have to be a jerk to be a successful CEO? Is exploitation the only path to profit? The good news is that many companies, big and small, in the food economy are blazing a different path through Wall Street's jungle of greed, demonstrating that money and morality can be compatible. Texas supermarket chain H-E-B, for example, has drawn an intense loyal customer base by 1. Investing in good wages and benefits for employees, 2. Showing up in such emergencies as pandemics, hurricanes, freezes to give essential supplies and hands-on help, and 3. Being an involved and supportive neighbor to the hundreds of unique communities it serves. Also, Maine Grains is relocalizing the business of milling grain by working with local farmers who had been abandoned by global grain marketers. They're producing flours from heritage grains, boosting the local economy in the process. Then there's Bob's Red Mill, which also mills its products from diverse natural grains, and it's 100% employee-owned. These are part of a rising business alternative to the selfish profiteering ethic of Fortune 500 titans. Called certified B corporations, they definitely exist to make a profit, but they're equally focused on having a positive social impact, prioritizing fair wages, environmental protections, and healthy communities as core elements of their missions, even making those goals legal requirements of their corporate charter. This is Jim Hightower saying Ben & Jerry's and New Belgium Brewery are just a couple more of some 3,800 other businesses now organized as B Corps. Though not pretending to be perfect, they're at least striving to be more than money grubbers, instead trying to contribute to the common good. For more information, go to bcorporation.net. The Hightower Radio Lowdown is made possible by you lowdowners who subscribe to our monthly newsletter, The Hightower Lowdown. You know who you are. Thank you.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, Matt Gaetz. Your buddy Joel Greenberg evidently is about to plead guilty to federal sex trafficking charges. Because if he's pleading, he probably got himself a sweetheart deal, and that sweetheart deal was selling you down the river. So good luck in prison. Maybe they'll put you in the same wing where the rest of the Trump cabal is going to eventually end up. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on, the Greenberg-Gaetz saga, also all of the insanity going on. I've asked our good friend Sarah Burris to come back and share some thoughts with us. Sarah is a fantastic reporter over at RawStory, does some of the most important investigative work and some of the most important writing on the interwebs. Make sure you check out her work at rawstory.com. Sarah, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you so much. My puns, I feel like, are saving the world one pun at a time.
One pun at a time, and that's important. But Greenberg, there's no way he's pleading guilty unless he got a nice deal and Gaetz is under the bus.
Yeah, absolutely. He's hanging somebody out to dry, so I don't know who the bigger fish could be. The only person I could think of that would be bigger than Gaetz would be Donald Trump or Ron DeSantis or somebody like that. So it's got to be Matt Gaetz because those are the people he was partying with. And I mean, here's the thing, like, we've got the receipts on Matt Gaetz, and unfortunately, because the Republican Party is, oh, well, let's wait and find out. Let's let the investigation do its thing and all of that crap. We've had over a month now of constant news about this thing getting worse and worse and worse and worse, and Republicans being asked, oh, can you comment on this? Are you curious about, what's going to happen with Gates? What do you, did he do it? Did he not do it? This is like a huge thing that the Republican Party is kind of hitched its wagon to, and I don't know how they think that they're going to get out of it, other than, it's just like, oh, well, here's another. If you
ignore it, maybe it'll go away. Maybe if you go, look over here where Liz Cheney's at, here, you'll forget about all this stuff over there.
Because that worked so well with Donald Trump. Well, I didn't see what his tweet said. I didn't see it. Don't ask me. I didn't see it.
Look, and the Republican Party is a total dumpster fire at this point. And look, I said from the beginning, and I'll say it again, I don't care about Liz Cheney. Don't like Liz Cheney. I think she's a horrible legislator. Policy-wise, she's a monster and she's evil and all of that. But the blind squirrel found the nut. I give her credit for at least not wanting to lie when everybody knows the truth. It's not that she doesn't lie, but she's not going to lie when literally everybody else knows what's right.
I know. I've actually found that really shocking, that of all of the things that Republicans are willing to stand up for or against or lie about, all of the things from, especially from the early 2000s, from the Iraq War, from, stuff about crazy things that her father did and the twisted financial dealings that he had both before, during, and after he was out of office. I just am surprised that she has any scruples whatsoever, and that she's willing to stand up and be like, oh no, this is the line. This is the line. So I guess it's really good that we now know where Liz Cheney's line is, and it's refreshing that that's hers. If only it then could roll into the rest of the Republican Party, but expectations.
So that's the depth. That's as deep as she'll go. The rest of the party, they're free fall.
I guess. I'm surprised. Obviously there were 9 other Republicans who voted to impeach Donald Trump. And so it's surprising to me that all of those Republicans are not, as big of a deal. And I guess it's because she's in the leadership, perhaps.
She's a she.
I think too.
She's a she, and she's in a place where Republicans are in firm control, which means they can easily get someone crazier and more Trumpy to take her place.
That's true, but wasn't there another woman that was a Nova or a vote for impeachment?
But she's not in a district. I don't remember.
But it's not a leadership.
I don't remember her being in a district like where Cheney's at, where easily she's going to get whipped from her right. And Cheney's going to lose from the far right. That's going to happen.
Yeah.
And so they could make an example out of her. Whereas I'd have to go back and double check. Where my thought is that the other ones maybe not as easily.
Maybe they were in more of a purple district instead of a shoe-in.
Right. Now I look at this crazy guy from Georgia, this Andrew Clyde, which everybody's been talking about today, so we got to bring it up. And again, he's just regurgitating, I'm sure, what he's been told, because this has been what the Republicans have been trying to do since January 7th, is normalize the treason that they recorded and broadcast by saying there was no insurrection. They were just good people walking between the lines, defecating on the floor, building a gallows to hang Mike Pence. Happens every day.
There were very fine people breaking into our Capitol.
Yep.
On both sides. It was the East and the West. And I'm surprised that I think one of the things that I was the most surprised by is the fact that he was reading from this paper. It didn't seem like it was an actual opinion of his. And so when they asked him about it today, reporters asked him, he was at believe it or not, he was at a police week commemoration ceremony because apparently a cop in his district died. And so he's somehow commemorating some cop at this police week thing. And two reporters went up to him and said, could you, asking him, this seems weird. You're at this police thing and you basically are just crapping all over the Capitol Police. And he acted like that wasn't what he said. And I was really kind of struck by that. I was like, was he literally given a piece of paper to read and he didn't actually hear himself reading it? I mean, is he really, this is a guy who is not the brightest bulb in the tanning bed. He's a couple of fries short of a Happy Meal. He owns a gun store, I think, in Georgia. That's his career that got him to Congress. So, I mean, this is one of those very strange things where he seems like it's just a complete tool of the right. Not like, that
it looks like
tool.
Marjorie Taylor Greene wrote his notes for him.
Yeah, it just seemed like it just seems so weird because one, I've never heard of this guy. Because there are 430.
35.
Yeah. Trying to think if we have any special elections because somebody died lately. And so obviously this is some guy who hasn't stuck out to me until this moment.
Yeah, me neither.
So,
I mean, I had to look him up. And now I'm going, wow, here's a new one. Looks like he's trying to get his 15 minutes, and he's gotten it. He's gotten everyone's attention. And
I think he's probably trying to get his 15 million is what he's trying to get for fundraising for the election.
No, and look, it is really all about the money. I mean, I look at someone like Lauren Boebert who came in and she had very slick campaign to get the gun nuts on her side and start pouring money. They had very slick videos and they had a whole kind of reality star YouTube influencer kind of campaign going to where it wasn't about legislation. It was just about making her look like an homosexual.
Yeah, it was a cult of personality and it's gun fetish. And that is her brand. She created this brand and this personality that has, I think, incensed so many people in her district to be rapidly running to the polling places to vote for her. And it's kind of that same model that Donald Trump has employed. It's this cult of personality. And so I look at her in sort of the same vein. And to a lesser extent, I feel like the last election, Marjorie Taylor Greene wasn't really as out there as Lauren Boebert was.
Right.
But now Marjorie Taylor Greene is sort of employing that same tactic for the exact same purpose.
No, you're right. I think Greene's going to win again. I think there's a good chance she could win. I don't know about Boebert.
Of the two, I feel like Boebert is probably less so, but I don't know that district as well. The one thing that I found out in the last couple of weeks is that the county parties, the county Democratic parties in North Georgia, have all joined forces, and they are working hard because they prioritize this. This is a really important deal for them, and all of them have come together to start raising money, to start building an email list and getting volunteers and door knocking, and like they're starting early, and it's a priority for them. They don't even have a candidate yet, but that's how important this race is to them. And that's one of those things where you're just like, yes, good on you. This is exactly what, I wish every Democratic Party would be doing. And, good on them.
Yeah, no,
Go Georgia.
Look, it comes back to getting things done. And I think the more Biden gets done, if we can get an infrastructure bill pushed through at some point sooner as opposed to later, I think that's going to be helpful. But it is what it is. But the reason I brought up the Georgia Republican Clyde in his comment is, they're trying to normalize what happened on January 6th. Mm-hmm. In fact, you've got the 1-6er group who every day does the Pledge of Allegiance and sings the national anthem while in jail. And, now you find, all of these people, and you've written a story on this, that you got these people who are, no, we weren't actually doing anything wrong. We were just defending ourselves. We were defending ourselves by jabbing a cop with a flag, or by hitting him in the head with a fire extinguisher, or by defecating on the floor, or urinating on someone's desk, or stealing laptops. And we were just defending ourselves, Sarah. Poor us. We were standing our ground.
One man in particular said that whenever he was bashing a cop with a skateboard, that he was doing it to defend himself. And that was in part of his the court documents as he was trying to get the court to let him out of jail. while he was waiting for his trial. And the Justice Department came in and was like, interesting you say that. Because we actually have a new video that shows you beating the hell out of somebody several times. So this actually was not just you defending yourself against one person. This is a pattern throughout the course of the entire insurrection.
Yeah, but here's the thing. Here's the thing. If you could make a case in the court of law that if I start a fight with somebody and they beat the living tar out of me, and I then have to kill them because I was just standing my ground, I was defending myself. If you can make that legal, I can make an argument for a guy beating a cop with a skateboard. He was just standing his ground. The cop kept coming at him.
Right. I wish that was the way it really works, because then, maybe fewer people of color would get shot. But it's consistent with the message of this wasn't that big of a deal. This wasn't an insurrection attempt. This wasn't an attempt for for people to try and take over the legislative branch of Congress. Nobody was trying to kill any elected officials. That's part of this narrative. It wasn't that bad. It's not that big of a deal. He wasn't trying to kill anybody, obviously. He was just standing his ground. He was just defending himself against these. And it's all part of this narrative to basically deny the moon landing from 1/6, right? It's the same idea. Like, we're denying the moon landing. We're denying the Holocaust. We're denying 9/11, and now we're denying 1/6.
And now, now they're gloating over how, speaking of Georgia, how easy it was to go and rig the vote. In fact, this Jessica Anderson, the executive director of the Heritage Action Group, Heritage Action for America, evidently she was bragging that was easy to get their legislation through Georgia and with the Republicans there.
And we know about the Heritage Foundation. They do all of this research, that's fake research to justify right-wing policies. And in this case, this is their political arm, where basically they came in and said, hey, you guys should be pushing this voter suppression law. And they're like, oh, we don't know anything about writing them laws, because that's real hard.
Here you go. We've got it all written for you. All you have to do is put your name on your homework. Like when you were in school.
That's exactly what happened. That's exactly what happened in this case. And then she went and bragged about it. She said, in some cases, we write it for them. And in other cases, the one thing that really killed me was she said, in some cases, we try and make it look more organic, like it came from the grassroots, so it doesn't look like all of the other legislation is. Like, so now you're not only writing legislation on behalf of elected officials as a special interest group, as a big money group, but now you're trying to fake it so it looks like it's from activists or grassroots.
Yeah. So
that's how bad it is.
They don't want to look like the American Legislative Exchange Council, because you may remember there was a Florida legislator who actually took an ALEC model piece of legislation and just turned it in with ALEC's name still on it. She didn't even bother to write her own name at the top of the page. Yeah. She just put it right in. And the thing that I think most people don't understand is really the Heritage Foundation is the Republican Party's brain. Them and the rest of the state policy network. There are a lot of people paid huge money for think tank approved messaging, focus group approved messaging, so that they can then hand it to Republican legislators, because they're all lazy. They just want to go and drink and party and carry on and do whatever it is they're doing, preach to religious groups. So they do their homework for them. And they're very happy with that. Corporate America gets what they want because they fund these big think tanks, and the Republican politicians get what they want because they don't have to do anything other than going, here, I have someone who did my homework for me.
And now all of the corporations are going, oh, wait, maybe this is a bad idea. It's like all of a sudden they've realized, oh, maybe we shouldn't have been paying all of these right-wing groups this whole time, because it turns out this isn't getting us anywhere. This isn't helping us. And now, we've been giving money to all these Republican groups and none of them are in power. So, it's this evil cycle that I feel like one of the pieces of HR 1 does kind of talk about a little bit is the campaign finance aspect of it. And I wish that we could pass, obviously a Citizens United bill that was a little bit better, that would kind of block some of this stuff. But even then, like, this is really soft money. This is the Heritage Foundation is a 501c3. They are a nonprofit, and they're very clearly, like, they're creating lists of judges that Trump just printed off and went eeny, meeny, miny, mo, and picked Brett Kavanaugh. So, I mean, this is part of their thing, and it's something that the Democrats just don't do. They've never done. Democrats don't.
They're not that organized.
They're not, and they don't organize from the very beginning. That's the other part of this, is that, when you have a young Republican who's really smart and really good at campaigning, they're never unemployed, not for 1 second. They go from a campaign to the Republican Party grabs them and says, okay, we need to take care of you in the off season. They put them at the Heritage Foundation. They put them at, wherever somebody's office is a holding pattern until the next election.
Yep.
And Democrats just kind of leave all of the smart people out to dry, and they're like, good luck, have fun.
No, and this isn't just in the political world. This is media. This is, they fund professors in every university across the country. They fund people to write crappy books, and the Heritage Foundation buys them and burns them. There's just all of this money that goes through this that generates this kind of messaging, to where, just the guy who's driving around in his car with his mouth open, learning by osmosis, thinks that, oh my God, this is organic, when the reality is it's all just political theater that's been paid for by corporate money to get you to believe that the GOP really cares about you, when the reality is they don't.
They care about making money. That's all that matters. It's a business. The Republican Party is all about a business. And that's why you're seeing people like Marjorie Taylor Greene rise in the level of importance, because she makes money. That kind of fiery rhetoric and anger and frustration, just like Donald Trump, using his name on everything, it makes money, and that's what they want.
Yeah, what did you think of the yesterday, Marjorie Taylor Greene going after AOC?
Man, that was stupid. I mean, here's the thing: is everybody has a camera. Like, you can't do this stuff and not be captured on camera. And so there are these pictures, and it looks really bad. And
but doesn't it really looks bad to us. I mean, to her base, she's out there fighting the good fight.
But those people are never going to change their mind. If you have somebody who's like chasing after someone and screaming at them and poking their finger in their face, that doesn't play well with independent voters. Yeah, but nobody wants to see that.
This isn't about independent voters. This is about fleecing the flock. This is about getting more money out of the faithful, passing the collection plate, and getting more of the true believers to kick into her coffers. That's how I see it. I think she did exactly what she wanted to do, and it'll be interesting to see what kind of money rolls into her accounts.
I think if it wasn't that, it'd just be something else. Yeah. She'd go out and shoot some bill or something on a gun range or something. It's not, it's not this, regardless of what she does. Every week has to be a new stunt, and this just happens to be one of them. The difference is she's going after somebody, she's punching up is what she's doing. And you see this a lot of times with people on Twitter, where they want to build their following, so they start fights with people with larger followings, and then it becomes this huge deal. And it's the same thing, but it's happening nationally. Yeah. She recognizes that AOC is much more powerful, much more influential, and she's like, I need to get some of that. And that's what she's trying to do, which is why AOC is just like, talk to the hand.
Yeah, I love the fact that she just didn't feed the troll.
Yeah, I'm proud of her, because that's the smart thing to do. That's absolutely, and I'm not sure any other Democrat would have been smart enough to recognize that that's what it was.
I got to be honest, though, there's part of me, it just, I guess it's just, I grew up in a housing project. I grew up in a place where, that someone did that. I would have loved to have seen AOC just turn around and cold cock her right between the eyes.
It's hard, man. That's the thing, is you see these trolls all the time, everywhere. It's all the trolls, and it's so hard not to feed the trolls. It's hard not to say something in the comments, or not even look at the comments.
Just move. Don't read. Like, that's it. The first thing you learn. Don't read the comments. Now, but here's the thing. I mean, even Meghan McCain has jumped into kind of a little bit of all of this, where evidently she's not all that concerned about what happened on January 6th.
Yeah, it's the same sort of thing, where she today she decided that there were so many more. She called them real problems. There are real problems going on. And her real problem of today, I swear to God, was that when she left her house to go to work, And I thought she actually filmed the show at her house, so I don't understand why she has to drive into the studio, but whatever. But when she left the house, the gas station in her neighborhood had a really long line, and she didn't have time to wait in it. And so that is a huge problem, because Meghan McCain can't get gas. She cannot wait for 24 hours or for the weekend for things to like calm down. She needs her Ziploc bags of gas right away. And that is her real problem that is more important than the attack on the legislative branch of Congress.
Wow. Just
the entitlement.
Yeah, you listen to this stuff and you just go, I live in a different world than the rest of us.
Bless her heart.
Bless her heart. And finally, let's talk about the former guy. Is it possible Ron DeSantis could be his savior?
That is the funniest thing I have heard all day. This idea that I can't remember if it was in the Miami Herald or the Orlando Sentinel, but there was an article this morning about officials in Palm Beach County who are concerned that Donald Trump is going to get indicted and then arrested, and that they're going to have to do something to, because he's going to be at Mar-a-Lago, and they're afraid of like a standoff or like what their plan is. Like they're trying to figure out, okay, if this happens, what do we do? And the reason for that is that Florida is not an extradition state. So like, you remember whenever, what's his name was in the embassy in the
Russia.
Ecuadorian embassy. Yes. And so
Snowden or the other one, the other one, the blonde guy,
yeah,
the WikiLeaks guy, him.
Assange.
Yeah, there you go.
So it's the same kind of thing where they would not extradite him. Florida will not extradite Donald Trump because that's how, it basically would mean that the governor would have to sign off on it. And at least that's the way that it was sort of explained to us this afternoon. So it's one of those things where the only way that Trump can be indicted and then hauled off to court is if he leaves the state of Florida to then go to the Southern District of New York, DC, or the Manhattan DA.
Right.
Those are the three like main suits right now. So, but the interesting thing about that is that really kind of cuts into your 2024 plan.
Yeah, kind of does.
And
also,
you can't really campaign.
Yeah, the other side of this, couldn't the Southern District of New York then just seize all of his assets?
In Florida, they cannot seize your assets that are located in Florida.
Yeah, but
So
there's that building in New York that's got his name all over it.
But all of the stuff in New York, they could seize. And if he, showed up in New York and said, "Hey, don't do that," then they could arrest him there too. So I mean, he's sort of between a rock and a hard place. There's this idea that Ron DeSantis could step in and say, "No, we're not extraditing," but that would mean, every other, 49 state and all of our territories could be like, "Okay, well then we're not extraditing any of the criminals that we have to Florida." So it's sort of this trade-off of, you have all of these other states, and if you have any crimes that, somebody commits in your state and they flee over the state lines, then sorry.
Yeah,
if you're not going to extradite Trump, then we're not going to.
We have so much entertainment yet to come.
I know. That's a long way off. I think an indictment is probably a ways off. The closest one, I think, is the tax one in the Manhattan DA's office, just because they're starting to like dig down to Weisselman's grandchildren. That's how you know it's going deep. Yeah,
and look, whatever they found in Rudy's office, I'm sure that's going to bring some interesting fun as well. But again, this is a year down the road, at least, I think. So any talk
Hopefully
of him running...
just in time for election is what I'm hoping.
Just in time for election. Looking forward to that. Sarah, as always, I appreciate the time and the fantastic work that you do. There were so many more stories I wanted to get to, but I got to take a quick break here. I hope folks will take a look at all of those other fantastic stories over at rawstory.com. All of the articles there, not all of them there, but read all the ones written by Sarah Burris, my favorite reporter over there. Sarah, I appreciate you taking time for us.
Thank you so much. Have a good weekend.
You as well. Good stuff. Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. Listen to The Rick Smith Show.
saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
The fuel still has to travel through the supply chain before once again reaching the gas pumps.
Colonial Pipeline restarts operation days after major cyber attack.
Drivers along the East Coast have turned fears of a fuel crisis into an actual one.
Out of gas because panic buying led to shortages. Biden administration greenlights nation's first major offshore wind farm. Plus,
Elon Musk sent the cryptocurrency on a roller coaster ride over the past few days.
Tesla ditches Bitcoin due to massive carbon footprint.
All of those crypto stories and more straight ahead from BradBlog.com. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
Stand by for 6 minutes of independent green news, politics, analysis, and snarky comment.
Chaos at the pumps tonight.
This is worse than a hurricane.
No, it is not worse than a hurricane. What is wrong with this country? This is your Green News Report. Okay, Desi Doyen. Let's start hoarding gasoline just because we can, I guess.
No, let's
What?
not.
No?
Huge sighs of relief among officials and consumers after the corporate owner of the massive Colonial Pipeline began to resume operations on Wednesday, ending a 5-day shutdown following a massive ransomware cyber attack. As we go to air, there is no word yet on whether the company paid the ransom.
Oh, they paid.
The pipeline supplies 45% of fuel for the East Coast. The company says it will take several days until fuel deliveries return to normal.
Correction, this just in. The company is saying they didn't pay.
It's important to note that there was no actual gasoline shortage on the East Coast.
But they paid.
That's according to government officials and energy analysts. But panic buying and hoarding of gasoline by consumers caused a shortage. Reportedly, thousands of gas stations in the Southeast ran out of fuel by Wednesday. Reports of panicked consumers using unsafe methods to hoard gas forced the U.S. Product Safety Commission to issue a statement warning, quote, "Do not fill plastic bags with gasoline."
Plastic bags? They were putting gasoline in plastic bags?
Reportedly.
What is wrong with this country?
Gas Buddy's Patrick DeHaan on CNN warned that hoarding is dangerous and actually impacts public safety.
People run out and hoard. That's going to mean less fuel for people that very much need it. Thinking first responders, frontline workers who need to get to work. Because once it's out, it's out.
But the pipeline cyber attack and the ensuing panic paid off great for oil producers. Oil and gas prices shot up because of the Colonial Pipeline ransomware hack.
The more they fail, the more money they make. Go figure.
In other news, out in the Pacific Ocean, Tropical Storm Andres set a new record for the earliest date in the year for a storm to form.
Showing this is May.
Yes.
We're having a hurricane form now?
In the Pacific. It's showing up before the official start of the Pacific cyclone season, which begins on May 15th. Andres broke the previous earliest storm record that was set in 2017. Tesla CEO Elon Musk roiled markets for Bitcoin this week when he announced on Twitter that Tesla will stop accepting Bitcoin as payment for its electric cars, citing the vast and relentlessly increasing use of fossil fuels, especially coal, to provide energy for Bitcoin mining and transactions.
About time. I know that a lot of people have been criticizing him for that for quite a while. Glad he is not doing that anymore.
Bitcoin relies on computers to exist, and the growing value of Bitcoin is directly tied to the amount of energy it uses. Because of Bitcoin miners, several coal plants around the U.S. and the world that would have otherwise closed were pressed back into service to mine Bitcoin. Some more good news. The Biden administration has approved a new utility-scale solar energy project on public lands in the California desert. It will be located in an area designated under the Obama-era Desert Renewable Energy Conservation Plan, which minimizes impacts on plant and animal species and tribal and recreational stakeholders.
Nice.
And the Biden administration has given the final go-ahead for the nation's first major offshore wind farm, issuing final permits for the Vineyard wind project off the coast of Massachusetts after it was canceled by the Trump administration. The 800-megawatt wind farm will power 400,000 homes. However, Vineyard Wind's CEO says that since the U.S. currently lacks a wind energy supply chain, manufacturing of some of the project's components must be outside of the U.S. But he hopes that the approval will spur investment in more U.S. manufacturing.
There's an idea.
It's a first step in catching up to Europe, the global leader in offshore wind. Europe installed the equivalent of 3 Vineyard Wind projects in 2020 alone.
Because Europe is better than us. What is wrong with this country? For much more on all of these stories and the ones we couldn't get to today, check out our website at greennews.bradblog.com. Find, follow, and share us planet-wide on the Facebooks and the Twitters at Green News Report. I'm Brad Friedman.
And I'm Desi Doyen.
And this has been your Green News Report.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So, saw some sad news today. Spencer Silver died. I guess that would have been last Friday. He was 80 years old, and you're going, who the hell is Spencer Silver? He's the guy who invented the Post-it note. One of the most important inventions of the 20th century. How would my wife tell me what to do without the Post-it note? What would my wife be able to post on things and tell me, don't eat this, or don't do this, or hey, don't forget this, without that little yellow piece of paper with a little sticky stuff on the back to remind me? What would life be without Spencer Silver, who sadly on May 8th passed away? He was 80 years old, and there you go. The guy who brought us the Post-it note. Anyway, here to share some thoughts on the top stories of the day, our good friend, former Ohio Congressman and political analyst, Bob Ney. Bob, thanks for taking time for us.
Thank you, Rick.
Post-it note, Bob. What would you do without it?
Right. Well, I almost didn't make it on the show tonight. Carol and I were talking, and she was reading me all the honey-do list things for you on the Post-it notes.
Yeah.
We almost didn't get on tonight.
And there was actually a guy, I remember the story from years ago, who did his PhD thesis or whatever on Post-it notes.
Yeah. I used them constantly when I was in Congress. I mean, constantly. Would put them on my desk. I'd put them everywhere. On my car window.
Yeah, what would life be without Spencer Silver?
True.
There you go. Sad to see his passing. But he lived a good life. 80's a good run, I think.
There you go. Is.
Good for him, and I'm sure he did really well for him, especially Post-it note forward. Let's talk about ransom. Evidently, the Colonial Pipeline folks paid almost $5 million in ransom. I thought they didn't pay anything.
You know what? I think they got off cheap, actually.
Okay.
Because some of these malware criminals are charging like regular citizens $400, $500, $600. So $5 million. I mean, that's. I thought it'd be even more, but they did pay. Because at first I thought they said they weren't going to pay.
So if they pay, what guarantee do you have they're not going to do it again and make you pay again and again and again?
Well, correct. I mean, you don't. And if you pay, what guarantee do you have that they flip that switch back on?
Yeah.
But they did. I mean, what is it? Honest cyber criminals? I don't know.
And now we also find out that people. There's some folks who've hit the D.C. Police Department. Evidently, the same kind of Russian-speaking ransomware syndicate is what they've called it. And evidently, they've got a whole bunch of disciplinary files on the police, intelligence reports, lots of embarrassing stuff that they're holding over the D.C. Police Department's head. They're asking for $4 million, and I'm going. I guess one got away with just about $5 million, but they're holding the DC police hostage for $4 million.
And the oil company's got a lot more money than the DC police. They've got documents, confidential documents. They've got them, and there's the other thing: if you pay, who says they're not going to release those documents anyway?
Yeah. Yeah. But here's my thing. Should they pay to keep those things quiet? And isn't that stuff that, fine, put it out. We the citizens should know what's going on, shouldn't we?
Well, if it was, I don't know if you remember the kind of famous Steubenville, Ohio was back in the district I represented.
Yeah.
They had a rape case up there. I'm sure you remember that. Well, at that time, Anonymous came in and went through the computer systems of the school and found out some, I don't want to misquote, it was a coach or somebody was covering up for these two guys for the rape. They were covering, trying to cover it. So Anonymous went in and then at that time released all of that information for, quote, the good of the public. And it put a whole different light on the case. So that's what Anonymous does, though. And this group is not Anonymous group. This group is more of the what you call, the criminal element.
Yeah.
So I don't think that they would, if paid, I don't think they would release. Now, if it was anonymous, they wouldn't even ask for money. They would just go in to give, light of day on issues.
So we're anti-criminal syndicate. It sounds like we're pro-anonymous.
Well, I mean, I'm just saying it's sort of like, I can get in deeper here in controversy. It's like Eric Snowden. Is he a traitor or a hero?
Right.
You know what I'm saying? If it wasn't, I remember there was Senate testimony when they were sitting there saying, no, we don't do that. And all of a sudden Snowden goes on live from Moscow. And yes, they do. Yes, they listen to you, So it's sort of the same thing. What Anonymous does is illegal, but then again, it's sort of like the Robin Hood thing, Anonymous then printed things in the rape case that would absolutely have never been known.
Yeah.
And so they did an illegal format to do it. Now, so I think they're going to be looked at differently, even though it's maybe not legal. Whereas the criminal element, the dark side element they call themselves, they are doing it for money. I'm just surprised that they don't turn around and do it again.
No, I am too. And how long does $4 million buy you then if you're the pipeline folks, or $5 million? How long does that take? Is that 6 months? What is it?
I would assume they're going to pay somebody $2 million to build a better firewall. Somebody.
One would hope.
Wouldn't you think?
One would hope.
Or $3 million?
At least. And now you've got Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg saying today that this is a wake-up call. Duh, this was a wake-up call 10 years ago. We should have been doing something 10 years ago.
Well, what I sort of don't understand, when we started on technology, which was in 1995 actually in the House, because we didn't have internet till then, and we started technology and we were getting breaches all the time. And if you notice, how many times do you hear that the congressional records and members' offices is being displayed by somebody somewhere? You don't. And we created a system. I was there with Steny Hoyer at the time, and then Congressman John Larson of Connecticut, and we spent considerable amounts of money, I mean hundreds of millions over a period of time, Rick, to create better systems, because China and Iran in particular were trying to hack our systems every night in the Congress. So I'm sitting here thinking, if to this day Congress has done a pretty good job at doing that with military-level protection, in a sense, of the computer systems, why is everybody else not getting on board? Why are there so many breaches?
Well, this is where I go back to, and this for me goes back to, Y2K. We didn't know what was going to happen with the computer systems, and we were afraid that all the water, the water systems were going to shut down, and all the power grids were going to shut down, because we had no idea how the computers were going to react. And it made me go even at that point going, we need to be thinking about this stuff a little bit differently and doing it a little bit better. And now I'm looking at all of this ransom stuff and all of the cyber attacks, and you go, shouldn't we be on a certain level not handing this off to private corporations who do this kind of stuff in piecemeal? Shouldn't there be some kind of overhaul, some kind of comprehensive plan to make sure that we're not so vulnerable?
Well, there should be, and there should also be grid plans. Texas did what it did due to its, deregulation, et cetera, and then people didn't have to, provide the backing of these break-off electric companies, and so you saw what happened down there. And I think it's a responsibility, should be, of the federal government to be able to say we have certain grids, and you're going to operate off of alternative grids, and we're going to create more grids. It's just like the computers. If you leave it up to some of the private companies to just say what they're going to do, this is what you can expect to happen. Whereas the government should have at least the ability to say, these are the certain standards you're going to use. Surely the NSA actually could be of help, I would assume.
Yeah, and again, for me, it comes back down to this, the fact that a lot of software development happens in places like China and India. The fact that the Russians have such a huge cyber attack capability. And someone had tried to sell me on this Kaspersky Labs, and I'm going, they're a Russian company, right? Well, sort of. I guess they've got ties. You go, shouldn't we be on a certain level talking about this stuff in a national security light? And not having one phishing email take down half our grid.
Right, exactly. Or just like this. 45% of the supply of oil to the east,
Yeah, I'm not getting my trees cut down this weekend because, a friend, the person who was going to do it was coming up from Virginia, can't get gas.
I just had a call from about 10 minutes ago. A friend in Florida said that he is going station to station and cannot get gas. He's got to leave, of course, in the morning somewhere, and he can't get gas. Couple
of days. Yeah. It'll be fine. And then
the dirty mineral mining. That's another one. They call them dirty minerals, dirt, and it's China's cornering that market. And we let one of the last companies collapse in the United States. These are the little parts that are in the phones we're talking on, and the computers, and China rules.
Because we're stupid.
Right.
Evidently. I wanted to get your thoughts on the big news of the day. This congressman from Georgia, this Andrew Clyde, who I actually had to look up because I didn't know who he was. He wasn't anywhere on my radar. But I'm sure you saw the quote, but he said that there was no insurrection on January 6th. To call it an insurrection is a bold-faced lie. Watching the footage, the TV footage, and those who walked the Capitol and walked through Statutory Hall showed people in an orderly fashion, Bob, staying between the stanchions and the ropes and taking videos and pictures. If you didn't know the TV footage was from the video from January 6th, you'd think it was just a normal tourist visit day, Bob. It was just a normal walk through Statutory Hall. That's all. It's just a normal day.
When I read this, and of course, the Capitol is dear to me as it is to people that serve there and the people of the United States. It's our symbol, one of the greatest symbols. And when this all happened, I mean, I've talked to friends, staffers, and former members and members that it made everybody just that were normal sick to their stomachs over this. And I read this article of this Georgia Rep Andrew Clyde, and he said he used words like docile. And that they stayed in the rope lines, and that they had an orderly fashion, staying between the stanchions and the ropes, taking videos and pictures. How could he even think like that?
Well, because there are a couple of videos where a couple of guys did do that.
Yeah, but how he. I don't know.
While they were in an orderly fashion building a gallows to hang the vice president.
I just don't know how he can even believe he gets away with this. I don't know. I guess he does.
No, but this is the normalization of that kind of behavior. And you had to know this was going to happen, right?
Not to this level. I mean,
really?
I can see people will debate, did Donald Trump, say to destroy the Capitol or not. I mean, they'll debate that, and you'll hear arguments. How do you debate after looking at the videos? Because a lot of members, have said, McCarthy yesterday, the minority leader, said that, it was a horrible thing. It was wrong, and they should be prosecuted. So how does anybody come up with what this guy comes up with? That shocks me.
No, I can see it.
I don't get it.
I can see it in 6 months. I can see it a year that these people are going to be framed as patriots, as heroes. These are going to be the people who are defending democracy. And who knows? At some point, we may be calling them the 1-6ers, and history will remember them as the founders of the revolution. I'm looking at this stuff and going, we'll see how this history is written, but they're in the process of trying to make these people out to be heroes.
Well, I know. I mean, and then some people commented about, some of the violence that was perpetrated against the people in the Capitol because somebody was shot. I mean, what do you kind of expect when this is going down?
Yeah,
of course, the Capitol Hill police are going to respond.
The most outrageous. I'm glad you brought that up. I think it was that Paul Gosar, who called her a martyr. She was executed. No, they told her stop attacking the Capitol. They were defending themselves from a raging mob. She was no martyr.
Yeah, he said she was executed, and this was the woman that was coming through the speaker's lobby. And just for the listeners' edification on this, once you go through that door where she was shot, you are within literally 3 feet of going into where the speaker's podium is. You're within 3 feet. So I understand. It's sad. Everybody gets killed. I understand why she was shot.
Yeah.
They don't know whether she had a gun. Everybody came in. They didn't go through metal detectors like this. Georgia congressman makes it sound like they went through the metal detectors before they orderly took pictures. They didn't know whether she had a gun or not. She was within feet, 3 feet, if she got in there, of where people were. And Gosar says that the police executed her. I couldn't believe it.
Yeah, well, I can. Look, at the end of the day,
I was shocked.
No, see, none of this surprises me because this is what I expected. They were going to rewrite this history. They're going to look. I fully expect some of these trials, these people to stand up and say that they're patriots. And that going to jail, they're martyrs, and they're going to be GoFundMe accounts to support their families. I see this going in a really, really bizarre place with some of the folks in this country. And
he should be hit for statements he's making about the Capitol Hill police. He should be hit by other, not physically, but he should be attacked back by other members, especially the Republican side, either side. He should be hit back at because the morale of the Capitol Hill police is just going to continue to get bad. I mean, if they say they're executioners, what were they supposed to do? Just all the police just leave the building, let them go.
They're good people, Bob.
Supposed to do?
They're good people.
Wow, bizarre, Rick. It just blows my mind.
Good people. They were just taking pictures. And like the guy who was beating the people with the cop with the skateboard, he was just standing his ground.
Now, Georgia Lieutenant Governor Jeff Duncan, in response to a video that they put Clyde's comments side by side with the video, he said his quote was something like, "It's hard to believe any elected official could be this oblivious." The lieutenant governor had said that about the congressman from Georgia, Clyde.
Another oblivious congressperson from Georgia. You've got Marjorie Taylor Greene going after AOC yesterday.
Yeah, on that, there was when the members start to say, well, they think they'll take her to the ethics committee for this, unless she hit her, they do have to stop this part of it. Look, Marjorie Taylor Greene went out, and she achieved what she wanted to.
Yep, got attention.
She stood in a hall, yelling at AOC. I loved AOC's comments. I was a bartender. I threw people like her out all the time. That was the bar. That's what she said. But Marjorie Taylor Greene, hey, you don't call Antifa and Black Lives Matter a terrorist group. Hey, I'm talking to you. And then Greene threw her hands up in the air so everybody could see her dramatically off the floor of the House. And that's what she wanted. She wanted in the newspapers and TV. Now, when they made the comment, though, well, maybe she should be taking the ethics committee for it. No, don't give her any more publicity because it's not it's a stupidity violation.
Yep.
Now, they're going to have to make a committee for stupidity. It's not an ethics violation.
No, they shouldn't. And look, and I go back to what I said from the beginning. They shouldn't have thrown her off her committees because now she's got nothing but time to cause trouble. Should have at least kept her pretending like she was working. Or at least as my, and I say this all the time, as my son says, keep her on the committee because she's not useless. She serves as a bad example. That's simple.
But
anyway,
she wanted publicity. That's all.
That's all she wanted.
Because for her, it's good to attack AOC.
That's all it's about, getting attention. Her mother must not have breastfed her. Who knows? Very, very bizarre times. But, Bob, I appreciate the time. As always, good stuff.
Thank you, Rick. Okay, thank you.
Let's take a quick break. Right back. Stick around. You're listening to The Rick Smith Show. We're working people. Come to talk.
Saving work in America, one show at a time. The Rick Smith Show.
I'm Rick Smith, and this is Labor History in 2. On this day in labor history, the year was 1968. That was the day that workers across Paris joined students in a citywide general strike. College students had begun an occupation at the famed Sorbonne University earlier that May. These students were protesting what they saw as governmental repression in post-war France. A story by NPR marking the 40th anniversary of the protests described the situation in France, where women could not wear pants to work and married ones needed a husband's permission to open a bank account. Homosexuality was a crime. Factory workers could be fired at will. The news on the single TV channel required governmental approval. And the overcrowded education system was authoritarian. The students protested French leader Charles de Gaulle and the police. The addition of workers to the protest greatly increased its scope and impact. Paris and much of the country ground to a halt. President de Gaulle was able to weather the protests and keep his political power. By the end of June, most workers had returned to their jobs, but the country would never be the same. The protests of that spring became known as the Social Revolution. It was a turning point in the nation's history, and institutions from workplaces to universities would undergo a liberalization due to the protests. One of the most lasting images from the strike was a series of posters, simple designs emblazoned with the slogans and demands of those involved. One such poster called people to strike, declaring, "Working now is working with a gun to your head." Another read simply, "Factories, Universities, Union." Labor History in 2 brought to you by the Illinois Labor History Society and The Rick Smith Show. For more information, go to laborhistoryin2.com, like us on Facebook, and follow us on the Twitters at Labor History in 2.
Welcome back to the Rick Smith Show. Now, here is Rick Smith.
So leave it to Missouri. You may remember, back, last election cycle, the good folks of the Show Me State voted to approve a constitutional amendment expanding Medicaid coverage for all the folks there. For people whose incomes were under 138% of the federal poverty line. It passed by a 53 to 47 margin back August, I guess, of last year. The Missouri legislature refused to fund it. They refused to provide any funding for it. And now the governor of Missouri, Mike Parson, is saying, we tried. We tried. Sorry, poor people. No health care for you. And this, again, is another one of those moments where you go, these are people who should be voted out. The collective outrage should be very loud. People should be registering to vote. And this is where I keep coming back. The dumpster fire that is the GOP, they have no ideas. They're bringing nothing to the table. This is where Democrats have an opportunity. And that opportunity is to make people's lives better. And Joe Biden, if he can get through an infrastructure bill and you can start getting, jobs and people getting back to work. And I'll tell you, there's part of me that I'm very happy to see that people are holding out a little bit for higher wages. We're going to tick things up a little bit, and you may actually see higher receipts into your state coffers. You may actually see lower payments going out for all of the social programs that we have. This may be a really good thing. I'd be interested to hear your thoughts, though. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. If you missed any of today's program, you can download the podcast there at the website. Get the app on your smartphone. Take the program on the go wherever you go. And as always, you can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Make sure you tune in tomorrow, the big panel. We'll have the wrap-up of all of the fun and excitement of this week. Looking forward to that. But again, if you got any thoughts, questions, comments, love to hear them. You can email me, rick@thericksmithshow.com. Thanks so much for being here. We'll see you back here next time.
You've been listening to The Rick Smith Show.